ballots, you are a useless hag, Tulsi. And I mean that in every sense of the word. Useless.
When we're looking at this document now, what's pretty clear is that 5+ years after the election, dozens of court cases, more review than any election in world history. Over a year now of the Trump administration being in total power of the federal government. And all they could possibly allege in this affidavit, if you take it at its word, is that there was some human error on a long night working an election in the middle of a global pandemic. And that error didn't have any impact on the outcome of the election.
Thanks to newly unsealed search warrant affidavits, we are now learning how the FBI convinced a judge to let them raid the Fulton County, Georgia elections office and essentially seize 2020 voting records. This happened late last month. We covered it on this show. And this is the update. It turns out that they relied heavily on claims from election deniers that have already been debunked over and over and over again. So here's what we know so far. And Tulsi Gabbard is part of this, so just bear with me before we get to that part. In 2 search warrant affidavits, authorities said that they were looking for evidence that would determine whether discrepancies in the Fulton County vote tabulation were the result of intentional wrongdoing that could constitute a crime. So let's just pause before I give you more. We are still talking about the 2020 election because Trump can't let it go, even though he is the current president of the United States. Just let that sink in. So the affidavits didn't identify any Fulton County officials as a target of this probe. It didn't cite any evidence that any specific crime had occurred, but they got that warrant anyway. Instead, the documents rely on accounts from 11 people, many of whom are prominent election deniers or members of Georgia's Republican-controlled state election board, to suggest unknown persons may have purposefully sought to tamper with the country's, or the counties, I should say, with the county's 2020 results. Now, one claim in the affidavit comes from a Georgia resident who said that there were 17,852 missing ballots, or I'm sorry, missing ballot images in Fulton County. What is that? Missing ballot images? The images part is important here. Fulton County officials noted that at the time, the law did not require them to maintain ballot images, like a photo of everyone's ballot. So missing ballot images do not mean ballots are missing. Gabriel Sterling, a former top election official in Georgia, noted in 2021, the election officials have all of the actual ballots that have been counted 3 times. Do you guys remember that? So there were demands that, Georgia do a recount. I mean, the idea that the Trump campaign didn't have their opportunity to investigate and prove that there was widespread voter fraud is laughable, to say the least. I mean, dozens of times they went before a federal judge and lost because they didn't have a case. They didn't have evidence. Rudy Giuliani even admitted as much during one of the court cases. Okay. This is all about Trump's vanity project. This is what he's focused on. Anyway, so Fulton County officials noted that at the time, the law didn't require them to keep images of ballots. Another section of the affidavit talks about pristine ballots that appear to not have any folds or creases in them. They apparently find that very suspicious. They're referring to the fact that absentee ballots have to be folded to fit into an envelope in order to be returned. Now, the presence of those pristine ballots, some in the affidavit claim, is evidence that extra ballots were introduced during the counting of absentee ballots. But as the New York Times explains, there are multiple reasons that a ballot might not be folded at all. So some overseas and military ballots can be printed and not folded. Ballots that are damaged or can't be read electronically sometimes have to be duplicated, reprinted, and reprocessed. So, people's vote counts. And those ballots that were reprinted are unlikely to have creases or folds. And besides which, guys, let's say, and this isn't gonna happen because they don't really have a case here. It's not like Georgia wasn't already investigated like crazy following the 2020 election. But even if Trump gets his way and they somehow flip that state from Biden to Trump, what about all the other states he lost? Is this what he's gonna spend his second term doing? He's gonna go state by state, engage in these ridiculous tactics and try to get the states to overturn the 2020 presidential election from Biden to Trump. And remember, unfortunately, like Trump is president now. What are you trying to accomplish with this? But okay. Issues like these have repeatedly been explained by county officials, and I'm bored by it. Honestly, that's why I'm reacting to this story the way that I am. I'm so bored by the repetition in the news cycle because these egotistical maniacs won't let it go. You lost, okay? You lost, you bungled COVID. People were angry with you. You lost. Just get over it and move on to the fact that you're president now, but he can't do it. The FBI and Justice Department had previously investigated many of the affidavit's claims and interviewed many of the same witnesses and had concluded they were not supported by the evidence, according to people familiar with the matter who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss details of the investigations. All right. Now, at least 11 lawsuits challenging the 2020 election results in Georgia have been filed, and none have proved that there was widespread voter fraud. The errors cited in the affidavit would not have been significant enough errors to even sway the outcome of the election in Georgia. And that's according to multiple independent reviews. And thanks to the affidavits, we also know more about who's behind this probe.
This will be fun. Let's talk about first dates. We've all been there. You're trying to figure someone out, so you ask the important stuff up front. What are you looking for? What are your deal breakers? You get right to the point to see if they're the right person for you. Well, the same goes if you're hiring. You definitely want to address key questions first to see if someone could be right for your role. That's why you need ZipRecruiter. When you post your job, ZipRecruiter suggests screening questions to help you identify top candidates faster. And today you can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. Their matching technology immediately starts finding qualified people who actually check all your boxes. No wonder ZipRecruiter is the #1 rated hiring site. Ask key questions and hire faster with ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TYT. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
So the FBI says that the investigation began thanks to a referral, not a federal, a referral that was sent by Kurt Olson. That's one of the election deniers who was recently appointed to an important role in the White House because of course he was. Here's more about Olson.
He's an attorney. He has been involved in litigation, fighting what he said was Joe Biden's false win. So he has long denied the election results of 2020. He also represented Kari Lake when she was running for governor, and then she did not accept the election results in Arizona. And at the time, Olson was sanctioned by an Arizona court for false statements that he made related to that case. He now is overseeing these investigations. The CIA confirmed to me today that the president has asked Mr. Olson to look at intelligence related to the 2020 election, and the agency, the CIA, is ensuring that he has the access necessary to do his work. Politico is reporting that he has access to sensitive intelligence.
All right, so that's Olson, great. Really happy about this. Now, given how weak the affidavit is, many elections experts are shocked that a judge even agreed to sign off on the warrant. Remember, when I originally covered this story, I was like, okay, this raid is super fishy, but there was a judicial warrant, and you've got to make a case before a judge in order to get the judge to sign off on this. Many of you argued, well, it could be a Trump-appointed judge who's super biased, and that was definitely a possibility. But here's what's going on. David Becker, executive director of the Nonpartisan Center for Electronic Innovation and Research, is one of the people who was shocked by the fact that there was a judicial warrant to do this raid. Let's hear a little more from him, and then I'll fill you in on more.
I'll be honest, when I knew this was coming out, I was expecting a lot more in here to justify the seizure of election records from an election more than 5 years ago. And it's pretty weak, to be perfectly honest. In this affidavit signed by an FBI agent justifying that they had probable cause to believe that there was evidence that related to the commission of a federal crime, they basically admitted there's no intent. Their own studies that they cited in there said there was no intent to do anything wrong, and intent is a necessary element of proving any federal crime. They didn't have any allegations with regard to election theft at all. In fact, they admit that the ballots were counted 3 times, once entirely by hand, and confirmed the results in Atlanta and in Fulton County. They don't mention anything about foreign interference or a foreign nexus, which would have been necessary to invoke any jurisdiction for the Director of National Intelligence, and she was, of course, inside that room.
So that final point about DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard is a very important one, and one that I want to focus on a little bit here, because she had written in a letter to Congress that the Bureau's investigation into ballots cast during the 2020 presidential election in Georgia was a national security issue. What a pathetic ghoul this woman is. Absolutely pathetic. Absolutely. All the people who are like, she's peaceful, she doesn't want to go to war. She would never use national security as an excuse to engage in bad behavior, right? In abuses of power. But here we are. As the US government's top intelligence official, ain't nothing intelligent about this cult leader, Gabbard asserted she had robust authority to oversee matters involving foreign intelligence and counterintelligence threats. You are a useless hag, Tulsi. And I mean that in every sense of the word. Useless. All the people who were excited about you serving in this role because they thought that you would provide some protection for the American people so we don't engage in more of these foreign wars. Well, you failed miserably, didn't you? But in the meantime, you're choking on Trump's let's move on. So the affidavits said nothing at all about possible foreign meddling. Nothing at all. And earlier this week, the New York Times also reported that Trump had told her to investigate the 2020 vote. You got to do that. You get it done. The day after the search, Gabbard arranged a call between Trump and FBI agents in which he praised and thanked them for their work on the inquiry. Now that the affidavits have been released, Senator Mark Warner, the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, is demanding answers about Tulsi's presence during that FBI raid at the election facility in Georgia. He says, quote, "So why was the director of national intelligence there? When the nation's top intelligence official inserts herself into a matter with no connection to a foreign threat, it's hard to escape the conclusion that the objective was political, namely getting back into Donald Trump's good graces, and that her presence was meant to lay the groundwork for baseless claims of foreign interference." Bingo. Tulsi Gabbard showed us who she is a while back, and people decided to shoot the messenger rather than maybe consider what Tulsi's record said about her as a person, what her unwillingness to be interviewed by me when she had previously agreed to do a joint interview with me and Cenk. This was during the 2020 election when she was running in the Democratic primary. When she realized that I had looked at her record, she demanded that I get booted from the joint interview. I wonder why. Seems like a scumbag like her had a lot to hide. But I just hope that next time I say something that goes against left-wing narrative, or any narrative for that matter, people just maybe consider that I'm acting in good faith. Maybe take a look at the sources I'm providing, the receipts I'm providing, and then make your decision. Because I'll tell you something, if I wanted to be a grifter, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be making a lot more money.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.